I'm here today to do my movie review for Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. I am doing both parts together just because I didn't really want to make two videos about this, because the first one would just be about how slow the first one is, and the second one would be about how rushed the second half is. So I'm going to combine the two, and overall this movie was pretty good, although what they kept and what they tried to keep and didn't keep, my opinion varies on whether or not that was good. So I will just go right into the likes and dislikes here, get that out of the way. My first like is that it does a little bit better job of showing how smart and tenacious Voldemort is in terms of his abilities and his talents and his knowledge. Although he goes about acquiring his knowledge very differently than how we see Dumbledore acquiring knowledge in the 6th book, because this involves a lot of torturing, he does go out of his way to learn as much as he can as quickly as possible, which is one of the great things about him, even though he's entirely evil. And the big example of this for me was when he was looking at the twin wand cores, and although this isn't explored as in depth in the movie, they do mention it, and they do show it to some extent, especially in the opening scenes where they're getting Harry out of his aunt and uncle's house. My second positive in the movies is Sassy McGonagall. In the books, even as Harry has gotten to know Professor McGonagall better, she has gotten a little bit sassier as he's grown up. But these movies, I think, exemplifies it the most. Just the things she says when they get back to the school, they're humorous and they alleviate some of the tension, and I absolutely adore them, especially given that some of it actually did happen in the book. And I love the screen time McGonagall gets, because Maggie Smith does an amazing job playing her. And then this next one is actually both a positive and a negative for me, because the positive aspect to this one is that Dobby was in the 6th movie, and they kept him with his same final moment, and the things he did for Harry were so brave and amazing, and they exemplified the kind of character Dobby was. The reason I think this is a negative is because they screwed up his representation in every other goddamn movie they did. Like, Chamber of Secrets, where he was first introduced, was okay, but every other movie where he was supposed to pop up like he did in the book, he didn't, and that screwed it up, because even though to a reader this moment is incredibly impactful, it is not the same with someone who has only watched the movies. They have no idea exactly how important Dobby is to Harry, and it drives me mad that they kept such an epic moment of his character development, of his heroic sacrifice, but they completely screwed up every other part of it. So, I'm torn, because, like I said, I love that they had it and that Dobby finally got the screen time he deserves. I hated it because it was his death, and they screwed everything else about his character in the movies in terms of screen time. My second negative is the lack of Kreacher's arc. In the book, you have him and Harry kind of getting on more even footing, getting more stable, and actually having a productive relationship, and in the movie they have none of that, and you hate Kreacher the entire time. My final negative is the pacing. As with the books, the first installment in the movie, duology, and the front half of the book, they're slow. They are Harry, Ron, and Hermione wandering around in the woods because Dumbledore didn't give Harry enough to go on, and there's too many loose threads and too few answers for them to really move forward effectively until they have one lucky jump. And I'm glad that they kept so much of the book in, and that they split it into a duology to do so. However, the pacing was erratic because of this. The first movie was way too slow. The second movie was, in my opinion, quite rushed in terms of what happened on screen. Some of it happened out of order, and I just wasn't crazy about that part. I also didn't care for that in the book, so I'm sure that's where that prejudice comes from for this part. I'm sure that's where my prejudice comes from for that part of the book and movie. I'll jump quickly to characters. Overall, My opinion here is pretty much the same as my opinion on the book. A few characters stagnated. Overall, they weren't too bad. However, I am gonna get upset about Neville and Luna in the movie. Neville announces, I don't know where it came from, but I decided I love Luna. And that is bullshit. Neville deserves better than that. Luna deserves better than that. They are two amazing characters. Amazing characters. And it pisses me off so much. So gosh darn much. That you reduced them to that last minute relationship. And it wasn't even in the books. And that's the worst part. You're gonna take creative license, you take it there? Come on. And that's really all I have. Everything else was the same as the book. Just that complaint I needed to get out of my system. And I will move into my wrap up because of that. In terms of a movie unto itself, I'd say it's about a 4 out of 5. They did a good job spreading everything out, although the pacing isn't great. The first part being too slow, the second part being rushed. They did get a good job explaining everything, and even in the slow parts, there were action to kind of spice things up a little bit. But it wasn't a knock it out of the park movie. I really enjoyed it. And I would watch it multiple times. I have watched it multiple times. In fact, I'd go so far as to say I watched the 7th book movie more than I read the 7th book. The second part especially, even though it was a little more rushed, it was just really solid and it tied everything together really effectively given the setup that was done in the first part of this movie. In terms of a book to movie translation, I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5. Big thing here is that while they kept a lot more than they have kept in previous books, I would say they kept too much in the wrong places. Like in the first half, they have so much in action and waiting around in the woods, and in the back half, they have all of the action essentially. And so the pacing wasn't as consistent through the two movies as I would have liked, and I think that would have balanced the movie a little bit more. In some places, they just kept the wrong things, in my opinion, and it ended up harming the book because they kept certain things, say, about Sirius Black's house and the manor that Harry inherited, but then they left out things like Kreacher and Kreacher's story. But overall, they split it. I'm glad they split it up. I'm trying to imagine to put this into one movie would have made me cry, and it would have been a 3.5 hour epic like the Lord of the Rings movies. And while that's not a bad thing, I wouldn't say it's necessarily good for the audience these books are typically intended for, which is middle grade readers. That's really all I have to say. This movie did a good job both in terms of the movie unto itself and the book to movie adaptation of giving you a really comprehensive picture of the story. And although I have a lot of complaints about it, it really wasn't that bad. And if you've gotten all the way up to the 6th installment, these last 2 movies are definitely worth taking a look at as well. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!